What if I told you that The Rock's most dangerous opponent was never another wrestler or a movie stunt? It was a workout routine that almost killed him. The paramedics who saved his life that day said they'd never seen anything like what his body had been through. But the real story isn't what happened in the gym that morning. It's what happened the night before that drove him to push his body beyond its breaking point. March 22, 2017, 11:43 p.m. Dwayne Johnson was sitting in his home office in Beverly Hills, staring at a medical report that had just been emailed to him by his personal physician. The words on the page seemed impossible, terrifying, and completely at odds with how he felt physically. Elevated cardiac enzymes. Irregular stress test results. Recommend immediate follow-up with cardiac specialist. For a man who had built his entire identity around physical strength and invincibility, the report felt like a death sentence. At 44 years old, The Rock was in what seemed to be the best shape of his life. He was filming multiple movies, running a business empire, and maintaining a workout routine that would challenge men half his age. But the numbers on the medical report told a different story. His doctor Dr. Sarah Chin had insisted on the comprehensive physical after Dwayne mentioned experiencing what he thought were minor symptoms: occasional chest tightness during workouts, shortness of breath that lasted longer than usual, and a strange fatigue that even his legendary recovery couldn't seem to overcome. The tests had been routine, precautionary. Dwayne expected to receive a clean bill of health that would confirm what he already knew, that his body was a machine capable of handling whatever he demanded of it. Instead, he was looking at results that suggested his heart might be failing. The phone rang, interrupting his spiral of worry. It was Dr. Chin. "Dwayne, I know it's late, but I wanted to call as soon as I saw these results come in." "Doc, what does this mean?" "Be straight with me." Dr. Chin's voice was careful, professional, but Dwayne could hear the concern underneath. "It means we need to do more tests immediately. The cardiac enzymes suggest there might be damage to your heart muscle. The stress test shows irregularities that could indicate blocked arteries or previous cardiac events you weren't aware of." "Previous cardiac events? I would have known if I had a heart attack." "Not necessarily. Some cardiac events are silent, especially in people with high pain tolerance and exceptional physical conditioning. Your body might have compensated for damage that would have hospitalized someone else." Dwayne felt the room spinning slightly. "What's the worst-case scenario?" Dr. Chin was quiet for a moment. "The worst case is that you've been having minor heart attacks during your intense workouts, and your heart muscle is deteriorating. If that's true, continuing your current training regimen could be fatal." After hanging up, Dwayne sat in his office for hours, trying to process what he'd learned. His identity, his career, his entire sense of self was built around his physical capabilities. The idea that his body might be betraying him was more terrifying than any opponent he'd ever faced. But there was something else driving his fear: his family history. Dwayne's grandfather, High Chief Peter Maivia, had died of a heart attack at age 45. His father, Rocky Johnson, had suffered his first cardiac event at 52. The Johnson men had strong bodies, but apparently they also had vulnerable hearts. At 3:17 a.m., Dwayne made a decision that would nearly cost him his life. He walked down to his home gym, a state-of-the-art facility that most professional athletes would envy. The space was filled with equipment that had helped him transform from a struggling football player into one of the most physically impressive men in entertainment. But tonight the gym felt different. Instead of being a place of empowerment, it felt like a battleground where he would either prove his strength or discover his weakness. Dwayne's plan was simple in its recklessness. He would put his body through the most intense workout of his life. If his heart was strong enough to handle it, then the medical reports were wrong. If his heart failed him, then at least he would know the truth. What he didn't anticipate was how his emotional state would affect his physical limits. The workout began at 4:30 a.m. with his usual routine 45 minutes of cardio on the treadmill, followed by weight training that would challenge Olympic athletes. But instead of his normal measured approach, Dwayne attacked each exercise with desperate intensity. He was trying to prove something to himself, trying to demonstrate that his body was still the reliable machine it had always been. Each rep, each set, each drop of sweat was evidence that the medical report was wrong. But his body was trying to tell him something different. By 5:45 a.m., Dwayne was experiencing symptoms that should have made him stop immediately. His chest felt tight, his breathing was labored beyond what any workout should cause, and his heart was racing in a rhythm that felt erratic and dangerous. Instead of listening to these warning signs, he pushed harder. The final exercise that nearly killed him was something he'd done thousands of times before: deadlifts with 500 pounds. Under normal circumstances, This weight was challenging but manageable for someone with his strength and experience. But these weren't normal circumstances. As Dwayne approached the barbell for his third set, his vision was slightly blurred, his hands were shaking, and his chest felt like it was being compressed by an invisible vice. His body was screaming at him to stop, but his mind was demanding proof of his invincibility. He gripped the bar, planted his feet, and began to lift. What happened next was captured on the gym's security camera system, footage that Dwayne has never been able to watch. As the weight reached his waist, his legs began to buckle. Not from the weight of the barbell, but because his cardiovascular system was shutting down. His heart, stressed beyond its capacity and already potentially damaged, was failing to pump enough blood to keep him conscious. The barbell crashed to the floor as Dwayne collapsed beside it. Dave Martinez, Dwayne's longtime personal trainer, found him 3 minutes later when he arrived for their scheduled 6 a.m. session. Dave had been training elite athletes for 15 years, but he'd never seen anything like what he discovered in the gym that morning. Dwayne was unconscious, his skin was gray and clammy, and his pulse was so weak and irregular that Dave couldn't find a consistent rhythm. Even more alarming, Dwayne's body temperature was dangerously elevated despite the fact that he was no longer moving. Dave immediately called 911 while starting basic life support procedures he'd learned during his training as a paramedic years earlier. 911, what's your emergency? I need an ambulance immediately at 1247 Mulholland Drive. I have a 44-year-old male, unconscious, weak pulse, possible cardiac event. This is Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and I think he's dying. The paramedics arrived 7 minutes later to find Dwayne regaining consciousness but disoriented and in obvious distress. His vital signs were erratic, his speech was slurred, and he was having difficulty focusing his eyes. Sir, can you tell me what happened? The lead paramedic asked as they prepared him for transport. I was working out, Dwayne mumbled. Just working out. I'm fine. But he wasn't fine. The paramedics' initial assessment revealed signs of what they suspected was exercise-induced cardiac stress, potentially life-threatening strain on his heart caused by pushing his body far beyond safe limits. The ambulance ride to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center was a blur of medical equipment, concerned voices, and the gradual realization that Dwayne's legendary physical strength had nearly become his greatest weakness. Dr. Michael Torres, the emergency cardiologist who treated Dwayne, later said that what he saw that morning challenged everything he thought he knew about human physical limits. Mr. Johnson's body had essentially been operating in survival mode, Dr. Torres explained. His cardiovascular system was so overtaxed that his heart was working at nearly 200% of normal capacity just to keep him alive. Another 10 minutes of that intensity, and we would have been dealing with a massive cardiac event. The blood tests revealed the full scope of what had happened. Dwayne's cardiac enzyme levels were elevated to dangerous heights, indicating that his heart muscle had indeed been damaged during the workout. His electrolyte balance was so disrupted that his muscles were beginning to break down. Most concerning, his troponin levels, a marker of heart damage, were consistent with someone who had suffered a mild heart attack. But the medical crisis was only part of the story. As Dwayne lay in the cardiac care unit, connected to monitors that displayed every heartbeat, he was forced to confront the fear that had driven him to this point. The fear of vulnerability, the fear of aging, the fear of discovering that his body wasn't as invincible as he'd believed. His wife, Lauren Hashian, arrived at the hospital an hour after his admission, having been called by Dave Martinez. She found Dwayne awake but shaken, staring at the ceiling with an expression she'd never seen before. "Baby, what happened?" she asked, taking his hand. "I tried to prove something stupid," Dwayne said quietly, "and I almost died proving it." Over the next 4 hours, as doctors ran additional tests and monitored his recovery, Dwayne told Lauren about the medical report, his family history fears, and the desperate workout that had nearly killed him. "I was so scared that my body was failing me that I almost made it fail me," he admitted. "I pushed myself past every warning sign because I was more afraid of being weak than I was of being dead." The additional tests revealed both good news and sobering reality. The good news was that Dwayne hadn't suffered permanent heart damage, and his cardiac issues were largely related to overtraining and stress rather than genetic heart disease. The sobering reality was that his body was showing signs of the accumulated stress from decades of extreme physical demands. Dr. Torres was direct in his recommendations. "Mr. Johnson, your body is not invincible. You've been training and performing at an unsustainable level for years, and now you're paying the price. If you want to continue your career, you need to fundamentally change how you approach fitness and health." The changes weren't easy for someone whose identity was built around extreme physical performance. Dwayne had to reduce his workout intensity by 40%, incorporate more recovery time between sessions, and most importantly, learn to listen to his body's warning signs instead of pushing through them. But the real transformation was psychological. The workout that nearly killed him forced Dwayne to confront the difference between strength and invincibility. He learned that true strength sometimes means knowing when to stop, when to rest, when to admit vulnerability. 6 months later, Dwayne was in better health than he'd been in years. His modified training approach had actually improved his performance while reducing his risk of injury. More importantly, he developed a healthier relationship with his own physical limitations. When asked about the experience in interviews, Dwayne rarely discusses the specific details. But he often talks about the importance of listening to your body and the danger of confusing strength with recklessness. "I learned that the strongest thing you can do sometimes is admit when you need help," he said in a rare candid moment. "My body was trying to protect me and I was too stubborn to listen." The security camera footage from that morning still exists, stored on a hard drive in Dwayne's home office. He's never watched it and he's never allowed anyone else to see it. But he keeps it as a reminder of the day when his greatest strength, his determination to never give up, almost became his greatest weakness. Today, when young athletes ask Dwayne for training advice, he always tells them the same thing: your body is not your enemy. Don't treat it like something you need to conquer. Treat it like something you need to understand. The workout that nearly killed The Rock didn't just change how he exercises, it changed how he thinks about strength, vulnerability, and the difference between pushing limits and ignoring them. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent you'll ever face is the voice in your head that tells you to keep going when your body is begging you to stop. Disclaimer: this story is created for entertainment purposes only and is not based on real events. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The content is fictional and intended for humor and storytelling purposes.